Hi, I am Scott Hannibus.
Hi, I'm Dario Lucy.
Hi there, my name is Lucy Ironmonger.
And this is Race Challenge. The central, idea of the app is we're all runners. We wanted to get people out running. And the idea is that you can go on to our app, select a challenge, for example, run the cumulative distance of Hadrian's Wall in a certain time limit. And then we will measure your activity through Strava and measure your, progress against that target.
Okay, guys, so what we're going to do is just kind of walk you through the user experience of Race Challenge without digging into any code at the moment, just so you understand the flow. So without further ado, welcome to the lovely login page. Dario, I'll let you chat about this.
Okay, this basically is our login page where basically the user is gonna log in and directed to our landing page. To say about this page is basically that after different approach, realize that in React we have a component that easily make this typing effect. The background image is applied only to the login.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a nice dynamic effect, isn't it, to start things off? So let's hit login. So I will talk a bit about this OAuth 2.0, which was something that I kind of mainly focused on. It's actually worth showing you guys now. So it's pulling the client ID, which is me as the Strava developer. And then we've got the redirect URL, which we'll talk about in a bit. And I'll just jump across here so you can see. So this is for the exchange token approval. And this is quite important. So this is basically the scope that we want from the user, so that when me as the user now authorizes it, gets some important information back and logs us in. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes there, but you don't need to worry about it. That was for me. Cool. So this is the landing page. Yeah, shall I briefly talk about the component structure? Because I guess it kind of helps. So we've got essentially three main areas that this that the site focuses on. So we'll go through the home, the activities list, and select a challenge. So jumping back into this. So if we go, I guess, to the activities first, that's quite a nice thing. So this was something I mainly built. This is quite nice. If you're a runner, you'll appreciate this. Yeah, so this is basically doing a GET request to Strava for your running data. So as you can see, we actually did have to go out on some runs to check it was working, which it was. It was very nice to come back and see that. So yeah, the other thing that's quite nice about this, which Dario had a big part in doing, is obviously this site is responsive. Got a nice menu as well. So if we head over to the challenges page, Scott, do you want to chat about this?
Yeah, so this is the, kind of central premise of the app. So this is the page where you can scroll through the challenges that we've put in place. So for example, there you can see the M1, the distance that the M1 is, and the time that you would complete to have that. So essentially the time over which you can run, and your cumulative total will be added up to see if you can run the equivalent distance in that time. Now, I know you worked on the kind of select challenge and how that kind of gets pulled through, Lucy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So this page kind of forms the two main, functions that it kind of bases around. So we've got handle challenge select, which basically when you click on these, it's taking this information, name, distance, time to complete, and that's saving that in state called selected challenge. But obviously that can change depending on what you're clicking on. So that's just really focusing on state. And then when you start the challenge, that is really what is posting that information that is in state at that point off to the database. When on the flip side of that, when you log in as a user, we are getting it to essentially do a GET request to the user challenge database to see if you're already in a challenge. Because if you are, obviously we don't want to be showing you. This page will show you the page for user is in a challenge, as opposed to this, which is user is not in a challenge. One thing that we want to develop that was beyond kind of the scope of this that we're sort of chipping away at the moment is a kind of thing that we want to do, which is active challenge. So one thing really is, as I mentioned before, if you're logging into the site, it's already going to check if you're in a challenge. So we want that to really update something called active challenge in state. The reason being is really to just have that single responsibility principle. We don't want that infecting your selected challenge, because that's really just for this page. Whereas active challenges, this user is in a challenge. So that's just something we're working on in the background. But yeah, if we basically select a challenge like Land's End, it will present it up here. We can start a challenge. That's then changes state. So we are now user is in a challenge. So this is what is representing at this point. So yeah, we've basically got, if we go view your challenge stats, that'll take us across to the home page, which again will have rendered some new components, obviously now that the state's changed. If we go for end current challenge, that sends a delete request. But yeah, we'll come back to that. So yeah, I'll let you talk about this, Scott.
Yeah, so this is where, when you are in a challenge, you'll notice that the render now has changed. There was the picture, kind of stock picture, I guess, of the runners on the front. Now that you've selected a challenge, as Lucy said, that's stored in state, and you get access to where you're up to in your current challenge, essentially. So you can see that that's reset now. We've spent 0.00 days in the challenge, because obviously Lucy's only just clicked that. There's the days you've got left, 195. There's the cumulative distance you've covered towards your run. So from this point now, from when the button was clicked till 195 days from this date, every run that you do through Strava will be added up and calculated and displayed on that page. And then you've also got the remaining distance to cover. When we go into the code a little bit later, I'll go into the kind of, magic in a bit more detail behind the scenes. But essentially what we're doing at this point is we are taking the date at which the user selected the challenge from the database, converting that to Unix time, and then we are working out what the Unix time of when the challenge ends is as well. And we're filtering your run data between those two times and adding up the distances in between. So it's actually relatively kind of simple logic once you've got the data and you kind of understand how to manipulate it. So, if we were to go out for a run tonight and do 10 kilometers, you'd come back in and then 10 kilometers would be in the distance covered.
So I think that wraps it up, other than for us probably to delete ourselves from the challenge. So yeah, we can hit end challenge and then we're straight back to this, which is obviously re-rendered for us. So yeah, we'll dive into a bit of the code now, show you a bit of that. Needs a bit of refactoring, of course, but we're getting there. Cool.
So I just want to very briefly talk over the logic that we're using with the actual kind of, I guess, central tracking of the competition itself. So we are getting the data from Strava in my runs. We're mapping over that, and we are tapping into just kilometers, or the distance you've run, as a piece of data, and also the Unix time at which you did that run. Then we're going to filter the run data. So we just return runs that fall within the Unix time of when you chose to start the challenge and selected that button, and when the challenge ends. And then, yeah, literally just within that time frame, we add up the distance of the runs you've completed, and that'll give you your cumulative distance you've completed towards the goal.
Hi, so now I will just quickly walk you through our Navbar component, which allow us to change the background on scroll. So basically we set up our Navbar state to false at the beginning. And very simply, we apply this logic where if we listen to the scrolling, so if it's greater or equal to 80 pixels, we set it to true. Otherwise, we set it to false. And then in our nav tag, we give a class name to Navbar where it listens whether is active or not, which is associated to the class name we have in our CSS file, which basically at the beginning is start as background transparent. When it's active, it change color to our orange app color.
Cool, nice one, guys. So I will just go into a little bit more detail about the authorization, which is using OAuth 2, which is quite a popular way of authorizing. So if you remember when we were on the login screen, I showed you this URL where basically we input our client ID from Strava, the app URL, which at the moment is localhost, and this was what I was talking about in terms of the scope. So basically the user is directed to this. Once they have been sent to there, essentially, if I show you the Strava documentation, actually, this is quite a good flow chart. So they're directed to the OAuth page, which I showed you. They authorize, athlete clicks authorize. They're then redirected back to another URL that we give them, which I'll show you in a sec. We kind of hide that away from them so they don't actually land on that page. So yeah, back to the code. So when you first land on the app, they hit that login page. They then head to, basically they return, once they've authorized, we are given an authorization code, which essentially we've received through here. If I head to token service, we then take that auth code. When they authorize, they come back, and in the URL, that's the authorization code that we need to grab. So we grab that through using the URL search params. That was good fun working that one out. I think there's a good example of it here. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to grab from what's returned. We then take that and then we post that off to Strava. So we post off the authorization code, and then assuming that's correct, we receive back the access code and the refresh token. So that's kind of how OAuth works. So once we've received that back, so if I go back to token service, we feed in the authorization code, and then this is, like I say, posting off the authorization code using the client ID, using the client secret, can't tell you what that is, authorization code and the grant type, and then basically what we're getting back is the access token and the refresh token. So basically what that works is it's a safe way of doing it, because it means that every 6 hours it expires. So you use the refresh token to send it out again and get new tokens. Now, Strava don't guarantee that it won't be new access tokens and new refresh tokens each time. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different, but basically you need to check every 6 hours. So got some logic to do that. So yeah, at the top here, it's basically working out what's the time now. Has it expired? If it has, run the refresh access token. So when you land on app, when you first log in, it's one of the first things it checks in the user effect is essentially checking the access token. Is it still valid? Has it run out? If so, it'll ping off for a new one. If not, if it's happy with it, it'll set the state to true for logged in, essentially, and then that will route you to the home page. So yeah, that was the OAuth. That was lots of fun. That took about 2 weeks really, which was quite stressful because we didn't have much else of an app to show for. So yeah, getting that boxed off was really good. Cool. I think we'll wrap it up there then, guys, because we've run out of time. But yeah, it's been really fun working on this app. I don't know how you guys feel. It's nothing like working to a deadline.
I've really enjoyed it. I completely agree with you. I was concerned at first because that authorization in particular was a nightmare. Did take, as you say, literally a couple of weeks, but started to really come together quite surprisingly late in the process, I think, but really quickly when it did start to come together. So yeah. No, I've loved it.
Learned a lot about Git as well. Like I feel so much more confident, you know, making branches, deleting branches, pull requests, pulling, you know, fetching, all of that. I feel really quite good about that, and this was the project that did it. So definitely. Yeah, cool. All right, guys, well, we'll wrap it up there, but yeah, well done, everyone.